Okay.
Okay. So good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi. So um, could you describe yourself in terms of your work and also the kind of company that you're working for
Yeah.
and your primary school work?
Right, so essentially, I am currently working at a small multinational company. So what we could describe ourselves usually is that we are a growth stage company in startup mode, which means that we actually behave like a startup, but we are actually a MNC, according to the eyes of the Singapore government, at least.
Okay. So how many people are there in your local subsidiary
Yeah,
here?
so currently we are less fewer than 10 employees, which means that across the functional heads, it's actually across the functions is actually quite spread out. So as for my job role,
Mm.
I actually handle legal, but besides legal, I also have to settle HR
Mm.
and other admin stuff here and there, simply because we are a small company and we cannot afford to hire that many people for all the various functions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one more thing before we move on. So how much of your work is outsourced to large law firms? Could you let us know that?
So most of the work is actually done in-house when it comes to basic stuff such as contract drafting and review. But if you are going to engage in-depth review, what we normally do is that we will send it out to our external counsel who will reply us and then we will take it on from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's mostly for the special situations type of.
Or especially when it comes to negotiations with like big clients, or let's say if they want to change something that is not in our standard form, then we'll want to get advice from external counsel just to cover ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So could you then describe your experience with LawNet in your current role, and if you have no experience with LawNet in your current role, when have you ever used it before?
Okay, so I've definitely used LawNet when I was in school, since we were all compelled to use it. Yes. However, in my current role, I have not used LawNet. To be very honest, I have not really considered trying to use LawNet.
Mm.
But if I am to use LawNet, what you're probably gonna ask, what am I gonna use it for, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting for me, especially, is to see how LawNet can actually help us when it comes to interpreting legislation. So I know LawNet currently has like the statutes and stuff like that, but if there is a way for us to be able to access relevant case law concerning a specific section of a statute, and that may be quite interesting for us because many a times when you are doing in-house work, it is to ensure compliance with certain processes, right? To make sure that your internal templates and your documents are in order. So in order to do that, we must always keep ourselves updated with the latest legislative changes and things like that. So if there is a way that LawNet can actually help us with this work, then it will be quite interesting for us, because rather than having to manually search, if the system is intelligent enough to direct us. Okay, so let's say if you are currently dealing with a PDPC provision, like what is the meaning of, let's say, confidential data or whatever, or third party provider, then if there is some way that if we look at the statute and then the system can tell us, okay, look, this was handled in such a case, and in such a case this was defined as that, and things like that. And so another thing that may be useful is corporate learning within the organization. So what we are always concerned about is how do you retain knowledge, right, within the organization, especially after you have moved on, or if one of your team members go. Companies are always afraid that you lose their expertise, especially when it comes to things that they have handled before, and say things like that. So if there is a way to have notes across the organization, it will be quite interesting as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let me first cover the cases in LawNet.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned that you would like LawNet to have the function to help you interpret statutes, right? So there's actually two ways of doing this. One
Yes.
is you, of course, you can search a case,
Yeah.
as you probably can remember.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if this feature was available after you've graduated, but today legislation actually is tagged in particular cases. So where
Yeah.
where legislation is cited, for example, in section 11, 13, or 15 of this Electronic Transaction Act, right, it's you'll be able to find it in that case. And alternatively, if you're really just trying to look for any cases that are interpreting a particular section here, there's actually a separate function where you can search the act that you are looking for along with the provision that was being discussed. So, in a sense, this sounds to me like what you would need to from learn it in order to help you interpret certain provisions.
Yeah, which makes sense as well. So it's quite good, actually. But actually, when it comes to it, right, if I'm looking at a particular statute, is there something similar, like in the reverse of what you see in the case law view?
So there's only cases showing what legislation is cited, but
So it's not the reverse, lah. It doesn't.
It doesn't have the statute, and then
It shows you the cases.
cases that are, yeah.
Because I was referring more to that, lah, because that would be quite interesting. Because many a times for us, especially if you are new to the job, right, you wouldn't know which particular section will be interesting until you have read the whole thing. So what we normally do is that, okay, just give the juniors or something. Okay, have a look at this provision, like this statute, and see what areas are interesting for us.
I see.
Yeah, so if they can read through, like, okay, section 1 preamble, whatever, and then you can see their links and stuff like that, then they can further do their research and things. It helps them a lot. Yeah.
So you would prefer,
Yeah.
so from your perspective as in-house counsel, essentially you will want an annotated statute instead of an annotated case that points to statute.
Yes, because normally the starting point is different for us, right? Compared to the what's the dispute resolution guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now that we've covered that, I just want to briefly show you all the functions that are available, and some of them, because they're not so self-explanatory, I will explain to you what these are. Give me a second. Okay, so here is a list of materials that are available in LawNet. I will go through with you some of the ones that are not so direct as to what they are, and you give me a feeling of whether you think this is something you can use in practice or will use in practice. Okay, so first we went through case law already, and the references to the legislation. There's separately a legislation section, but which is not annotated in that manner. Parliamentary materials refer to Hansard recordings, which do you use?
Maybe not as much. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is ebooks and AP titles, which refers to a collection of digitized books that SL has published. And so there's about, I think, 20 to 30 books on varying topics like contract and tort. But it's textbooks. So is this useful to you?
Standard textbooks are useful, yes. They will be.
Okay, so since it's useful, let's go through this. So this is actually a LawNet premium feature. So this you wouldn't get in the basic account. You will need to order the basic account in addition to the and you need to add the premium services on top of it. So let me just okay, so can you just give me something that you research on the ebook?
Ebooks are that's normal contract law.
Okay, contract law.
Why don't you try employment?
Employment? Okay, sure. So this is a sample of what you'll get when you search employment. So let's I give you let's say we're looking at data protection in employment setting, right? So what you will get is you will get a bunch of quotes from a book. You will actually not get the entire book. So essentially when you search, right, the logic of this is when you're searching particular terms, it will try to pick up where these terms are in the book and then show you some paragraphs before and some paragraphs after. As you can see, sometimes it's like only 2 paragraphs. At other times, the section can be as long as maybe 50 paragraphs or so.
Does it track footnotes as well? If the word appears in the footnotes?
You mean like this? It's reflected as a part of the search as well.
Yeah. Because if I search employment and if any of the footnotes that reference employment comes up, then actually by right you should be able to see more things, right? But I don't know. But I think it's just like you say, it's a conscious feature. It's a conscious decision
to not show
everything.
Yeah. So based on this implementation, do you think it's useful to you?
Okay, so the idea is good, but of course they've made a decision to not show everything, which I would rather prefer to be able to see the whole chapter or something like that lah. Because context matters, right? So if I only see like 2 paragraphs, sometimes I don't think I can get the whole context about what the whole premise is about and things like that. So when it comes to us writing like advice notes, it will be good for us to actually be able to get to draw from like a wider range of material lah, not just about this particular thing in question, because you want to set out the context, like why was this set up and why is there such a provision in the statute, for example, or why doing they do this and things like that. And so sometimes you may need to draw upon like different parts of the book to be able to form an opinion lah. Yeah.
And so searching this manner, I guess your point is it's not very efficient and can't help you get the whole picture. If you
Yeah,
need it.
it's a bit like, I'm not sure if it's a copyright thing, but to prevent people from copying and pasting things. But then again, talking about helping lawyers and in-house counsels, you want to give them, like, you want to allow them to make more efficient use of their time, right? So this is a bit half-hearted lah, I feel.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue with the other features. Right? So the next one is journals. This is academic journals.
Yep.
Is this relevant at all to you in your book?
Academic journals, I think it's more for the dispute guys, unless there are certain certain articles that directly relate to what's that called, corporate practice. Is maybe there are things such as, okay, how you should go about designing, like when you go about negotiation and stuff like that. So maybe articles for negotiation will be more interesting for the corporate guys.
Very much rare though.
Very rare. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So okay, maybe not so useful.
Yes.
Okay, next one is newsletters. So newsletters in LawNet.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's basically a combination of okay, so none of the materials are actually published by LawNet. As far as I can see, it's actually a collection of stuff that is available from various government ministries, firms, and things like that. So the plus point is you don't have to go and seek out individual firms to have it.
It's probably the same collection as you see on the Law Watch, right? In the Law Watch, there are all the articles over there at the bottom. That's actually very useful. I myself have used it quite a few times.
Okay.
Because I think law firms, they try to reach out to companies and stuff like that, and they give their clients like updates on legislation and things like that. So that is actually very useful for us in-house as well, because you can actually see what the prevailing like mentality is surrounding a certain change in statute, for example, because the law firms tend to be quite zealous when it comes to it. So whenever there is a new change in the law or something like that, and then you see like 5 different law firms trying to write something at the same time. Yeah, which is quite interesting for us, because we can actually have a look and to see what they're actually thinking about and the direction that they think that this development is trending towards. So this is actually very useful for us.
Okay, but the fact is, it sounds like you are already accessing it without LawNet.
As and when I see on Law Watch, I'll just save a copy of it for future use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here I searched employment for you. How about you take a look through this and compare this with your experience with either using Law Watch or Googling even.
Okay, so the good thing about this is that it gives you the history, right? Okay, so it gives you all the historical like articles that have been published. Whereas Law Watch only gives you the latest ones. So if let's say if you start work like start of this year, or if let's say if you're a new counsel, corporate counsel, then
it's a bit troublesome
it's
because
very troublesome because you can't access all these, right, without a subscription to the relevant like firm and stuff like that. So to have a repository of all these things in LawNet, it's actually quite useful for us as well, because you can even get like non-law people. It helps them as well. So it not only helps the counsel, but it helps your HR person and maybe your accounts person sometimes, or even like your managing director who wants to know a bit more about certain things.
Okay.
You can just pass them articles and stuff like that, and you don't have to write it yourself, which is the best.
Understand. Okay, so this is quite useful. All right.
Yes.
Okay, the next one is court circulars and practice directions.
Not useful
Even practice directions?
Practice directions, not so much, because the thing is that I think many of us came out of private practice. So whenever that happens, then actually you don't really care about it that much. You may be interested in it just for interest's sake, but I don't think it affects us as much. Yeah.
Okay. Alright, the next one, taxation, right? So are you familiar with taxation or bill of costs?
Taxation of bill of course, yes.
Yeah. So is there any a situation where you need to be involved in this?
Actually, no. I don't think there is. So unless my external counsel is doing something fishy. Things like that,
Okay.
yeah.
So this is not a feature that you.
It's not something that is for us, yeah,
okay.
at the moment.
Okay. Pleadings would not be. This also. Okay. So assessment of damage. I just briefly go through this. In its current I can show you the. Although I'm not too sure how relevant this will be to you. So essentially, it is a module whereby Lornet is trying to Lorna is trying to build like a predictor of damages for certain for certain categories of law. So in this implementation, this is for personal injuries. Is there a version that in corporate practice this might be useful?
It's really hard because a lot of times the disputes are centered around contracts and stuff like that about specific interpretations of certain clauses, and a lot of it is contextual. So it's not easily captured or predicted through like AI and things like that. So, because personal injury is quite standard, right? Because you have a standard template of how much normally if I lose a finger, lose a limb, lose a toe, whatever, I give how much, right? Then plus aggravating factors. So it's not that difficult for them. But for us, it's more usually disputes will be more complex.
Very unique in each case.
Unique. So besides the fact, maybe employment contracts.
And what
if you are assessing damages from breach, I'm trying to think of an example. So breach of confidentiality by the employee.
How much damages is expected?
But a lot of it is also like you have to put in all the stuff, right? And then if I can put all the stuff, you just put an Excel sheet and then just calculate at the end. So actually, it's not much use that I can think of at the moment. Actually,
okay, no problem.
Yeah,
no problem.
Let the external counsel handle it.
Okay. So so now that we've actually mostly went through all the features that are relevant to you, which basically is sometimes case law and the linking to legislation, but not in the manner you would like. And ebooks if it was longer. Plus newsletters.
Yes.
So now that there are 3 features that interest you in your work, what can compel you to use a service like this? Or rather, maybe the flip side question is, why are you not using it now, since there are useful features? Before you start, first thing is, do you not know what are the features available to Lornet? Is that why you are not even interested in
I think that is partly a reason, because normally we don't Lornet doesn't, the marketing doesn't really reach us for some reason. So there may be a part in it, and if they can do more to explain the features and things like that in an easily accessible manner, then it will be quite interesting for us as well. Yeah, so partly that, and also what will compel me to use Lornet. For me, it's really a cost issue. I'm sure I am not the first one, neither will I be the last one to raise it up. Because normally in a corporate setting, you have to justify your cost, right? You have to justify your cost to the company of why you even exist. And then they'll say that, since you're here already, why do we need to pay more for you to for all these things? So there is usually a cost factor that's involved, and we need to justify why we need this for our day-to-day practice, right? Because many a times the work that we do is not that interesting. It's not as interesting as the dispute guys who need to do a lot of research. For us, it's very static and reactive in a sense. We react to things that are happening outside.
Understand.
And stuff like that, which is why the newsletters are very interesting for us. But I wouldn't pay a lot for that if you think about it, actually. Yeah, so that's essentially it's the cost reason. Yeah, and the fact that we have to justify it. I think that's the number one reason. Yeah.
So let's say now there were 3 functions that we mentioned, right? Because one of the things that Lorna is interested in is also restructuring its content to make it more useful to in-house counsel. So let's say in your case, they went to augment their what do you call it, the statutory, the legislation portion, to link cases into each clause,
Yeah.
and then they also tidied up the commentaries and the what to in a more better searchable format. If they have done that and it becomes now useful to you, right? And let's say okay, including templates, which is what a lot of in-house counsels
A lot of
also
lawyers want.
yeah, so more templates. Under this structure, now let's say they have redone it, repackaged it, and now it's useful to you. Right? How much would you think a firm would be willing to spend on this to improve your efficiency? And two, if your firm isn't willing to spend, how much are you willing to spend?
Cost is quite relative, as always. Yeah, so.
But given like they have improved it to have fit
because
the mold that you wanted.
Because I think it's a fundamental thing with regards to the user interface and the whole product itself, right? So what will like if you have all these things, the next thing that I will want is a dashboard. So if I have a landing page with a customizable dashboard that allows me, like shows me like, okay, what are the notes that I've recently written? What have I looked for? What are the cases? And like essentially just all these things. Yeah.
Okay. So since you are on that, let me show you this. So this is a Lawnet premium account, right? So when it comes to a premium account, there's this side features available. One is what you search. This is for litigation lawyers tracking how much time was spent. This is what you have researched. Your search terms. So this is what you said about your previous search terms. There is bookmarks and annotations as well. So in annotations, essentially you go to any body of text. Right? You can highlight it and do an annotation, which will then be saved in your annotations folder, and bookmarks being bookmarking entire articles. So there's this feature also built in. So
it's not as intuitive
it's not
that is the thing I think generally Lawnet itself it can be better when it comes to the UI and the UX. It's much nicer than the older one, I think. But if they can spend some effort in it and package it nicely, then I think there will be a bigger sell as well.
So what's wrong with this UI? The one that I've been showing you.
Okay, so essentially, thing about UI is that you want to essentially point people to what they should do next, right? Yeah, so the thing is that you can actually put a lot of things that are not as important. For example, I don't have to see update profile and change my password every single time I log in. So that can be hidden. And then like the things that I will most usually use should be the first thing that I see when I log in, for example, and stuff like that. So that's the stuff like this, essentially.
So you think that they have too much stuff on their...
I think it's a bit cluttered. Yeah, it's a bit cluttered for now.
Okay, including the case. So just now we were looking at the search page. Even
the cases itself is okay. The case text itself, I think this page is still okay. It's actually quite nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just the search page that you think is a bit too...
It's the search page, the landing page and stuff like that.
Okay. So back to the original question, right? Given that if let's say they took your suggestions and repackaged it in the way you like, how much of it is a workable price for you if you had to take it upon yourself?
If I take it on myself, so given that I'm currently paying for Spotify without caring about how much I'm paying a month, which is $10 a month.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think $50 is interesting.
Okay.
I think that is a workable amount. But of course, you have to come back to how you're going to price it across the entire organization, because these costs will add up as well. If you want to give more people access to it, so it really depends on how they package it. So, for example, some of the other legal tech firms, right? They have very nice, attractive packages, which is something that Lawnet may want to consider as well. Because currently the pricing information is quite vague. Not say it's very vague, but it's hidden. It's not very accessible. It's not very intuitive and stuff like that. And there's a huge incentive for people to under-declare the number of users because of the way they tier their pricing.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I guess we've briefly covered the content and also actually the UI. I actually wanted to ask UI,
Yeah.
but you've also given your comments on that.
Yeah.
So let's the last part of this interview, right? It's going to be a section on commenting on what other features Lonet can uh take inspiration from competing legal service providers and especially of course, but I would want you to provide it in your own particular situation, so don't need to worry about what other corporate lawyers or litigation, just your in-house perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through Lexis and Westlaw first. So start with Lexis.
Yes.
Okay, so I recall just now you said that you only use Lexis when you're a student, right?
Yeah.
So let's go through what Lexis has here. You just tell me if it's relevant to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so first there's case law. As usual, case law is just case law.
Yeah.
There's a bit more information, but not that much different from law. It's a different UI.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the same comments for LawNet, right? Legislation is also legislation. Commentary, it has a little bit more. It just has basically Lexis writes its own commentary on certain but it's mostly litigation issues. Again, it's not very useful to you. You will, if you need any commentary, it'll be on things like what the law firms are writing about, developments in certain documentation. Okay, forms and precedents. This is, if I'm not wrong, it's court forms and precedents. Yeah, it's just court forms and precedents, which is not very useful to you. And journals is not useful to you, right? Okay. Yeah, this legal updates thing. Okay, so I will just ask you to look through the source of the legal updates that they have.
Yeah.
Is this more? So this is more. Okay, so there's big law firms.
Yeah.
There's a few different areas of law.
Yeah, it's very UK centered, especially.
Yeah. And there's appeal, PD. Okay, so is this useful to you as compared to LawNet's one?
I think LawNet is more useful, I think.
Because it has more relevant information.
Yeah, more relevant to our context, especially.
Okay. The other thing you can do in Lexis is buy books. So, do you ever buy books?
The thing is that if you can't even subscribe to LawNet, you won't have the budget to buy any books.
So,
that is the thing,
Okay. Yeah. So then this is also not useful. Okay, so LawNet actually, Lexis is not really very useful.
Yeah, Lexis is
from your perspective. Okay, so those are open to Lexis. Okay, so the next one I want to look at is Westlaw. Westlaw is a bit more interesting, I think, to you because Westlaw has a lot of business type documents and quite a lot of other features also. So this one we'll go through a bit more slowly because there's quite a few things in here that I think might be relevant to you. Okay, so Supreme Court decision.
The UK decision, is it?
This one is US, so it doesn't have the UK decision.
Okay.
I'm actually more so looking for the other stuff. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a case from Westlaw.
Yeah.
So this being US, so you only have US stuff.
Yeah.
But the information they present is a bit different. I think outright you will see that it's the things on the right that's actually more relevant to you. So there are secondary sources whereby you can read these are still litigation, but like things that are more relevant to particular things that have been brought up in here. So like defense of claims. So some things that maybe are not directly related to the law, but certain procedural things and how like you respond to it. This is it just happens that in this case this is not really this is a locomotive engine. Okay, so this is not really related to documentation, but in the documentation type of cases, the things on this right is more commentary on documentation. So I suppose this is actually, if it comes together with a case that is relevant to you.
Yes.
Like so, in your ideal workflow, I was supposed to be start from legislation, go to a case, then the case will point you to secondary material.
And feeds out from there, right? And that is quite intuitive, and which is quite good. Yeah.
And so the implementation like this would be quite relevant to you if it shows you relevant other cases discussing or even third party commentaries and that sort, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like briefs and things like that. Okay. So this is okay.
Essentially, it cuts down on our search times.
Yeah,
And
because
the effort that we have to put into search for certain things. Yeah, we have suggested readings and things like that.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is something that I think Lornet, if it changes, is basically what it delivers. It can deliver to more corporate counsel types. Okay.
Westlaw changed their UI.
I'm using the US one, which is why
US
it's
one.
different. Yeah.
Because I remember it used to have very shitty UI.
Yes, it used to have a very ugly.
Yes.
Okay. Statute and court rules. This one has commentary, which is what you're looking for. Also.
Yeah.
Okay, but we already went through that. So essentially, it's summaries on what particular clauses, what case law is interpreted, how other people have done it, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Regulations not so important. Admin decision on the secondary sources. Trial court fees. Okay. Have you ever needed to look at expert?
So how do you define expert?
So these are the experts that are called to court to testify.
Oh, the amicus curiae stuff, is it?
No, like actual experts like doctors.
Oh, the doctors.
And so is this something that's relevant to you? So essentially what they do is they provide like a detective work on experts. You can see their CV, you can see what they have spoken for, against their record. So this is basically when it goes to litigation, who you might want to call on as an expert and who.
Yeah, it can be quite interesting, especially if it comes to like valuations and things like that.
Have you ever had to handle a litigation?
Oh, thankfully not.
Okay. So you're not sure whether this will be useful to you.
I can imagine it can be quite useful if something really happens and the things and something like that. If we have to call upon our own expert witness, then it's good to have a base from which you can start searching for.
Okay.
If we don't really have the connection to the right people. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, there's no jury. Okay, so the next one, proposed and enacted legislation.
Yeah.
This is we can actually go through this. So yeah, so there's actually three particular things that go in this. I'm not sure if this is really that relevant, so I want your opinion. The first one is bill tracking. So essentially it reports to you, first, second reading, what has changed between the reading. So basically what legislation is going to get passed and what has dropped and been added throughout the process. Then, of course, second one is timing and schedule. So you know when they're going to go for it. And there's usually a legislation summary. So because the process is very long, right? So there'll be a summary of what has actually happened. Is this useful to you?
It's more important for the dispute people who have to do statutory interpretation.
So you're not that worried about it?
I'm not that worried. Essentially, the thing is that if it's law, it's law, right? If it's not law, then I don't really care about it, because it doesn't really affect me, right? It's like...
So you don't track possible changes to legislation?
Track possible changes. Although it's quite interesting when they have all these committee sittings and stuff like that. And you can, like especially when they try to gather feedback about a certain bill, and it's very interesting to see the perspectives as well, for us to maybe safeguard ourselves or to prepare for what may happen.
But is this something you do, like you need on a frequent basis to know what opinions are coming up on?
It really depends on the type of the law that's being amended and stuff like that. So I'm probably going to be only interested in the things that directly affect my work, which is PDPA. Yeah, since that is very relevant nowadays. Employment Act, because I have to draft all the contracts for the employees and renegotiate them. And then what else are there? So, and also industry specific laws, essentially. For me, electronic documentation laws will be quite interesting as well. So it really depends on the industry that the in-house counsel is in. They will be very interested in progress for their own types. Yeah, their own types of things. Yeah.
Okay. I see. Okay. The next one is business law center. So this one I will show you. It's essentially because Thomson Reuters has a finance arm, a news arm.
They have a lot of things.
Yeah, so this is where, at least from a lawyer's perspective, you can read business research. that's relevant to your particular. So in this case, right, SEC filings. So it'd be the equivalent of providing forms for filing to MAS, precedent agreements for certain types of transactions, and then news on what's happening. So in this case, because Thomson Reuters primarily reports on finance stuff, so they have a lot of finance administrative materials. Is this something that so
in a Singapore context, what will be interesting is that if LawNet can give us the standard templates that are provided by the ministries. So let's say if I have to terminate an EP, for example,
okay,
the employee has to pass on a letter of undertaking, right? So that I will not leave Singapore, so that I will not flee before paying my taxes, kind of thing. So if we can have all these like forms, government ministry forms, application forms, admin stuff lah. It's more of the admin side, because sometimes like lawyers will be asked to do all these things as well. Like, or at least to prepare a template so that then you pass it on to the relevant like accounts person to fill it in. So that may be interesting. That will be quite interesting because it will save a lot of time. I don't have to go to the ministries and try to dig up stuff.
So it's difficult to dig up.
It's quite difficult actually. Yeah, to dig out all the forms, and there are a lot of forms on certain things, so it will be quite interesting as well. But that's more for the admin side of things. Yeah, but for the MAS, the legal stock exchange stuff will be quite good for us to have it as well. Updated ones, of course, provided it's updated.
Okay.
So that's another thing to consider.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Any of the stuff on the right that they're suggesting to you that's maybe interesting to you also? Digests, trending topics, hot documents, notices, and other practitioner insights.
News is a very Thomson Reuters thing, right? Because they have so many sources and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's good to have, not necessarily in my opinion.
Okay. Alright.
Do they link to Contract Express?
They have their own sample.
Oh.
So this is what I'm going to show you next, sample agreements. So Thomson Reuters has a very big So which one is more relevant? Commercial? Employment?
Yeah, let's try commercial this time.
Okay.
See what do they have.
Okay.
Let's actually try to find. Okay, maybe if there's something. You know where the NDAs are located?
Non-disclosure agreement. You can search on. Okay. Asia.
Ooh, are these all executed agreements, or are they all templates?
I think they are. Let's take a look.
These are filed.
So there's Exhibit 10.1 of an agreement.
Yeah, it's essentially
executed agreement. Right?
It's essentially a contract that was standard in court lah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
File. Yeah, it's filed by a particular group. Okay. So how about something like this?
Yeah.
And I've already sorted it out by a little bit, but there's more sorting available by area, by even the market cap of the person. Okay, so something like this. Is this the implementation that LawNet should aim towards? So this is basically executed agreements that are publicly, maybe not publicly, just
It's a very US thing lah, I think, this thing.
available to
It's a very
people.
US thing.
So is this first question, is this good for you?
Interesting lah. It satisfies our innate curiosity to look at other people's stuff lah, essentially.
But would this be useful to you for work?
Yes, I would imagine. Yes, it will be.
Does this that means this serves as a template to actually what you let's say you find a somewhat similar one.
Correct. Because sometimes we are looking for wordings around particular clauses. And we want to make sure that we have wording that is not contentious essentially. That covers all the grounds, and sometimes it's easier to just adapt from an existing wording than to think of it yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because so that's really human nature and things like that. So it will make sense for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just for the record, right?
Yes.
So this is a search result where we have found executed agreements that have been filed into Thomson Reuters system, where we can see all the parties and all the clauses and that have been agreed upon. And that's what we're
I'm not
discussing.
sure if it's even going to be available in Singapore. I'm not that sure.
So
if
let's
there's
say,
such a thing.
so let's say Lornet can't show you executed agreements, right? What can they show you that is still useful to you in terms of templates?
Yeah, because a lot of templates are very specific, right? And the tendency is that people don't like to share their templates with other people and stuff like that. And so it's very difficult, I think, for Lornet to get agreement from people to share their templates unless they come up with their own. But then if they come up with their own, then who's going to draft it for them? So that is a conundrum that has to be resolved now. So for us, it would be good to have like wordings or maybe sample wordings around certain like areas of common areas of stuff like for example like all the mundane stuff such as CPF contributions. How should I word it? But normally in those cases the ministries will already have come up with suggested wordings and stuff like that. So a lot of the times it's really I don't see how this can happen in the near future because, as I've mentioned, people do not want to share their templates because they will say that it's proprietary information. Yeah, so short of Lawnet coming up with their own template and saying that this is a sample standard form for a shareholders agreement. Yeah. It's a bit like all those like the suggested contracts. I don't know what you call them that we used to do. We used to use for what's that legal case studies. Those very not so good agreements actually.
But you don't want those, right? You want something that's actually validated to be.
Yes, you want something that is actually proven to have worked in practice. So these are like you can give a very standard basic template, but which no one will use because they'll say it's lacking in so many other ways. Or you can go about providing a very comprehensive like standard agreement. So maybe the easiest way to go about this is to have a industry standard for certain types of agreements. Like this is a standard what's that called? A Singapore whatever shareholders agreement between two parties. Then you can have all the standard terms, and if your parties want to add to it, then they just add to it, stuff like that.
Okay. So something like when you incorporate companies as a standard Annex A for your
or like a standard employment form template. Like shows you you need to have parties, you need to have a tax, all these clauses and a standard wording around it. Which of course is not binding, but it helps people, you see, especially the SMEs and the one-man shop like entrepreneur who I want to hire someone but I have no idea how to write an employment agreement. At least I have something standard to refer to. And even if let's say I'm an in-house counsel, I'm trying to expatriate. I'm trying to get expat over to the Singapore office, for example. What wordings should I use? What's the template I should use? And what are the special provisions that should apply for all these cases? Then it would be quite interesting, like something good for the industry in general. Not just for me, but it helps all the business, not just for legal function, but it helps the wider community. And then maybe if that's the case, then you can broaden your subscription base, Lawnet subscription base to not just in-house, but also business owners and stuff like that. Because the corporate councils are all quite intricately like it's a symbiotic thing, right? With the company, you get the company, you get a lawyer, you get a lawyer, and you get the company and stuff like that. So, if you are going to push to corporate lawyers, then the next logical thing will, of course, to be offer it to like businesses as well, without a legal function. Because, to be fair, nowadays, especially small companies, we don't have a budget for a legal function. but sometimes there are still legal things that needs to be done, forms that needs to be filled in and submitted and things like that. And if LawNet can help people with such a need and have a pricing package, because for all these people they don't need case law actually. Yeah. So
just need something that's a bit more
one that will be a separate product offering already, which will be fitting into a lot of other people's businesses, but it's a decision for LawNet to make.
Okay. Understand.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I don't think legislative history is very interesting to you, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't care, because you only care about what's present.
Yes.
Okay, the last one, since you haven't went for litigation, this might be a bit more theoretical to you. But let me just show you what Westlaw Profiler is. So while I'm going through that, there's a couple of steps to get there. But what Westlaw Profiler does, right, is essentially it's a statistical analysis of lawyers and judges. So what it will show you is the cases that they have set on, how many they have ruled for and against, what level of cases were they at, who the attorneys were facing, etc. etc. So it's basically like a win-loss tally, like a university
very
ranking.
Adversarial. Yes.
Yeah, very adversarial.
Very adversarial.
Yeah. This is so different from the last time I searched this. So would something like that be useful to you as an in-house counsel?
No, I don't think so. Given that unless I am taking on cases.
Yes, when you're taking on cases, basically.
The thing is that normally if I'm taking on cases, we will not be appearing in court because we will not have maintained our subscription also, and we will not pay our dues to the law stock and stuff like that.
No, I mean like, so when you're hiring lawyers, for example.
Yeah. When hiring lawyers.
Because I've loaded one, right?
Yes.
So this is a district judge, so there isn't so much
cases
data on it. Because the Supreme Court judges are the ones that have more, but I don't know why it's not showing me the Supreme Court judge that I wanted. let me just show you the.
I think it show you the cases that she sat on before she was a Supreme Court judge.
Okay, so this first one, appeal decision. So by year, and then when you click on, you can actually see what cases there are and case types. So this is, as you can see here, this is primarily a science and tech and family law judge, and primarily dealing with family law. Which are the judges set with? Which are the attorneys that went against and won or lost in front of their judge? The law firms that have dealt with this judge before. And in the attorney's version, of course, it will be the flip side. So, and then it will show you what the attorney is good at, what the attorney is not good at. Is this useful to you as in-house counsel when you're hiring?
Hiring external counsel? Yes and no, I would say. Yeah, because normally when you look at external counsels, you are looking at like companies that they have advised, right, or they have experience dealing with, and the people that they have worked with and stuff like that. Sometimes you don't normally hire just because they can go to court and win the case for you, because so it's separate. So it's one thing hiring an external counsel to vet your stuff. It's another thing hiring external counsel to represent you in a case. So for the latter, this may be useful.
Okay.
For the former, I don't think so.
Not at all.
Yeah, not at all. So when shit really hits the fan, or so they say, then this is something that will be useful as well. But the thing is that, of course, you wouldn't know which judge your case will come before then. Because normally, like, when you receive the summons or you receive notice, like, you have been served. When you have been served, you don't know which judge will be
sitting on your case
before also. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is basically the big chunks of the comparison.
Yeah, it's very US centric, that one.
Yes.
Very US.
Yes, this is very US.
Very US.
But this is US is also where most of the new functions are.
Yeah.
So as a method comparison, most of my sources are US also. Okay, so you don't really use cases that much. I will skip justice one.
Yeah.
And okay, do you ever write documents where you had to do court case citations?
Court case citations, no actually.
No. Okay. Okay, then this is also not required. Okay, then I guess that's all the. Okay, so any since this is one of the interviews that's a bit different because most of the other interviewees are actual lawyers.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you think LawNet should do to reach someone like you?
To corporate people, is it?
Yeah, corporate in-house counsels. Aside from whatever we have already discussed, as a summary of sorts, or any additional thoughts.
Yeah. So the thing is that LawNet has to define a value proposition that appeals to corporate counsel, which I guess is the reason why we are doing all this. So what we really value is like efficiency. We can't be bothered to spend a lot of time searching for stuff because that normally is only a very small part of what we do in our day-to-day work. Most of the time is really spent going through documents and things like that. It's not really about researching on trending stuff and things like that. A lot of these things are reactive, which means that we'll only access them if needed and stuff like that. So, which is why like I was talking about pricing just now, because currently, given that we are not involved in dispute resolution, the chances of us logging into LawNet every single day is actually very slim. It only happens if we need information, which is not very often as well. Yeah, so it's really a question of whether you can diversify your product offering, right? Which is the reason why a lot of people suggested templates as something that will be useful for them. Yeah, but of course, another thing that LawNet can consider is really to have more information that's available as a dashboard to make it more appealing for in-house counsels to log it to it. So event information, for example, what's happening in the legal community in Singapore. Not sure if there's already such a function because I'm not subscribed to anything. Yeah.
If you're talking about general events, there is a section on it, but it's not specific to your work.
It's just general, like what's the SCCA doing, for example.
In terms of your work?
No, as in just in general, like industry events, conferences, and stuff like that, which I think Law Watch already has.
Yes.
Yeah, which Law Watch.
I think LawNet also has, but it's definitely not a feature within. It's not a feature. It's just. I think it's like under announcer the training and this page not even working. Yeah, that updates and stuff. I saw it somewhere before, but it's is it inside the platform?
So this is the user in the login page, right? The landing page.
Yes, but this is after you've logged in.
Yeah, the thing is that like just now there's a comment that I was making about how the UI should be targeted towards trying to get users to click on certain buttons to help them in their work and stuff like that. Right?
So you think there's more direction needed?
So there is an example of unnecessary things in the landing. So if you go back to the landing page, I'll show you something that I found out.
Yeah.
This doesn't need to be there.
So the description.
LawNet doesn't have to talk about itself after you have subscribed to it.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the very obvious one
that
I've seen. Yeah. So that's actually the obvious one that I wanted to point out, just as an interesting observation.
Yeah, so this is the About LawNet section on the LawNet SG main page.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other comments?
Any other comments?
For LawNet, yeah.
For LawNet and corporate counsel. Yeah. If LawNet wants to do value-added services, it's going to be something that probably be a scope for another discussion, I think.
Okay.
Where you get to lay down what do you plan to do, what are the vendors that you plan to work with, and what's the vision for all this, right? Because,
speaking of which, since just now you did mention that most of your time is spent reviewing documents, right? So you're aware of what's that company called, the UK one that checks M&A documents? Luminance, yes. So is what you want a Luminance that's cheap and works for like employment contracts, and is that what you're looking for?
Okay, so Luminance works if you are a big firm with tons of documents because that's what their value proposition is. They say they can help you save time. But when you are a small company, like I am in, with like not many contracts, its use diminishes versus the cost. But I do see the value of having something like that for my own work. When it comes to, okay, so I drafted an employment contract. How is it different from the 10 previous ones I drafted? And stuff like that. You can get a comparison with that, and like let's say for sales agreements, like commercial agreements that I'm drafting for my employer. So I'm drafting so I'm drafting a sales agreement and I have all these things and clauses. So what are the changes I've made versus all the other like versions that I've executed? That is something that can be interesting as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, it always boils down to a cost issue. Right?
It's a cost issue fundamentally for many companies and stuff like that. Because realistically speaking, the big companies are the ones that theoretically can afford to pay. Yeah, but you have to convince them that it cuts down on their time. It makes them essentially it allows you have to say that it allows them to make use of their time more efficiently to do more value added things besides the thing that you're helping them with. So that's essentially a productivity argument that has to be made. Before you can justify signing this stuff. But of course if the cost is low, then it's less obstruction because it's something that's good to have really. I would say it's a good to have, not necessary right now, but it's really a good to have something extra for us.
So is that it?
Yeah, that's really about it for LawNet. Yeah, it's quite interesting to see the features and to be updated about it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll provide this feedback to LawNet and hopefully they come out with something that matches with what you need.
Yeah, that appeals to us essentially.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.